Welcome, financial enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists alike. Today, we're diving deep into the murky waters of the world's most notorious financial scams. From the Kingfisher scam to the Enron scandal, these are the schemes that rocked the financial world and left investors scratching their heads and emptying their pockets. So, grab a seat and a good drink and get ready to witness the most outrageous financial shenanigans of all time. Once upon a time, in the land of corporate greed, there was a company called Enron. Enron was a big deal, and its executives were the coolest kids on the block. They had fancy cars, private jets, and more money than they knew what to do with. But behind the scenes, Enron was up to some shady stuff. You see, they were cooking the books. Not like making a nice recipe, but like fudging the numbers and hiding debts and losses so they could make themselves look good and rich. The Enron executives were like magicians. They waved their financial statements around and make it look like they were making tons of money, but really they were just pulling rabbits out of hats, or more accurately, out of their butts. They even created these fake companies to hide their debts, which they called special purpose entities, or SPEs for short. It's like if I created a fake company called ChatGPT's Magic Money Making Machine to hide my credit card debt. But eventually, people started to catch on. The SEC, which stands for the Securities and Exchange Commission, not some kind of fancy car, started investigating Enron, and the house of cards began to crumble. It turned out that Enron was worth way less than they said they were, and they had to file for bankruptcy. The executives went to jail, and Enron even became a cautionary tale about corporate greed and the dangers of cooking the books. Or is it? Because let's face it, there are probably still plenty of Enrons out there cooking up schemes and trying to pull the wool over our eyes. So let's keep our eyes open and our calculators handy, and maybe we can avoid the next financial fiasco. The Kingfisher scam. Vijay Mallya was a big deal in India. He was the king of the skies, the lord of the brews, and the master of the parties. He owned an airline called Kingfisher Airlines and a brewery called Kingfisher Beer, and he lived a life of luxury and excess. But as it turned out, Vijay was up to some shady stuff. You see, Kingfisher Airlines was losing money hand over fist, and Vijay was using his other companies to prop it up. It's like if I owned a lemonade stand and that was losing money, so I started selling my kidney on the black market to pay for the lemonade business. But that wasn't enough for Vijay. He also borrowed money from banks, promising to pay it back with interest. But instead of paying it back, he used the money to fund his lavish lifestyle. It's like if I took out a loan to buy a Lamborghini, but instead of buying the car, I used the money to throw a party with strippers and champagne. Eventually, Vijay's debts became too big to hide and Kingfisher Airlines went bankrupt. Vijay fled the country, leaving behind a trail of unpaid bills and angry creditors. It's like if I skipped town and let my lemonade stand customers and my kidney buyers high and dry. The Indian government tried to catch Vijay and get their money back, but he was living the high life in London, sipping champagne and lounging in his mansion. It's like if I went to Ibiza and partied with my kidney money while the police were after me. So the lesson here is clear. Don't borrow money you can't pay back, and don't try to pop up a failing business with other failing businesses. Oh, and maybe don't sell your kidney on the black market either. In the land of cell phones and data plans, there was a scandal that rocked India. It was called the 2G spectrum scam, and it involved a bunch of telecom companies and government officials. You see, in India, the government auctions off the rights to use certain frequencies of the radio spectrum for telecom services. It's like if the government auctioned off parking spaces and charged people for the right to park their cars in them. But in the case of the 2G spectrum scams, some government officials and telecom companies were colluding to rig the auctions. They were like a bunch of kids playing a game of musical chairs. But instead of playing fair, they were pushing each other out of the way and hiding chairs under their butts. They were giving each other insider information about the auctions, undervaluing the spectrum, and even creating fake companies to bid on it. It's like if I was selling parking spaces and I let my friends know ahead of time where the best spots were, and then I pretended like the spots were worth less than they really were. The result was that the telecom companies got the spectrum at dirt cheap prices while the government lost out on billions of dollars in revenue. It's like if I sold all my parking spaces for $1 each while the going rate was $100 a spot. The scam was eventually exposed and a bunch of people went to jail, but the damage was done. The telecom companies had already made huge profits and the government had lost out on a lot of money. So, the lesson here is don't cheat at musical chairs and don't rig auctions. Oh, and maybe don't sell parking spaces either. The Sahara scam. In the land of sand dunes and camels, there was a man named Subrata Roy. Subrata was the king of the Sahara Group, a company that promised to make people's dreams come true. But as it turned out, Subrata's own dreams involved scamming people out of their hard earned money. You see, he was running a Ponzi scheme, which is like a game of hot potato where the loser is everyone who invested. Subrata promised people huge returns on their investments in his company, but instead of actually investing the money, he used it to fund his own lavish lifestyle. It's like if I promised to turn my lemonade stand into a multi-billion dollar enterprise, but instead used the money to buy a yacht and a private island. But that wasn't the only shady thing Subrata was up to. He also tried to bribe government officials to get out of legal trouble. It's like if I tried to bribe the police officer who caught me selling lemonade without a permit. When Subrata's scam was eventually exposed, he tried to claim that he was just trying to help the poor people. It's like if I tried to claim that I was selling my lemonade for charity even though I was pocketing all the money. Subrata ended up going to jail, but not before he had scammed thousands of people out of their savings. It's like if I went to jail for selling lemonade without a permit, but not before I had made a fortune from that. So, the lesson here is clear. Don't fall for get rich quick schemes and don't trust people who promise to make your dreams come true. Oh, and maybe don't sell lemonade without a permit either. In the land of holy shrines and charitable trusts, there was a scandal that left people scratching their heads. It was called the WAKF board land scam, and it involved a bunch of officials and politicians. You see, in India, there's something called the WAKF board, which is like a trust that manages land and property that's meant to be used for religious or charitable purposes. It's like if a bunch of people got together to manage a park and made sure it was used for picnics and family outings. But in the case of the WAKF board land scam, some officials and politicians were colluding to sell off the land that was supposed to be protected. They were like a bunch of real estate agents trying to make a quick buck, but instead of selling their own property, they were selling off public land. They were using their positions to transfer the land to private developers who were then turning it into luxury apartments and shopping malls. It's like if I took over a public park and turned it into a theme park with roller coasters and gift shops. The result was that the land that was supposed to be used for religious or charitable purposes was being used for commercial gain. It's like if the park that was meant for picnics and family outings was now only accessible to people who could afford to pay for rides and souvenirs. The scam was eventually exposed and a bunch of people were arrested, but the damage was done. The public land had already been sold off, and the religious and charitable organizations that were supposed to benefit from it were left empty handed. So, the lesson here is don't mess with public land and don't cheat people who are meant to benefit from it. Oh, and maybe don't turn parks into theme parks either. In the land of big business and even bigger egos, there was a company called WorldCom. WorldCom was a telecommunications giant providing phone and internet services to millions of customers around the world. But as it turned out, the people running WorldCom were even more interested in making themselves rich than providing reliable service. You see, they were cooking the books and hiding their expenses, which is like pretending to have a lemonade stand but really just selling water. The company's CEO, Bernie Ebbers, was the mastermind behind the scam. He convinced his team to make false entries in the books, which made the company look like it was making more money than it actually was. It's like if I wrote down a bunch of fake orders for lemonade and pretended like I was making a fortune. The scam eventually caught up with WorldCom, and when the truth came out, the company had to file for bankruptcy. But that wasn't the end of it. Bernie Ebbers was eventually sentenced to 25 years in prison for his role in the scam. It's like if I got sent to lemonade stand jail for pretending to make a lot of money. The sad part of the story is that thousands of people lost their jobs and their savings when WorldCom collapsed. It's like if all the customers who thought they were buying lemonade from me found out that they were just buying water and then stopped buying from me altogether. So the lesson here is do not cheat people and do not pretend to make lemonade when you're really just selling water. Oh, and maybe don't run a telecom communications company if you are not actually interested in providing reliable services. Once upon a time, in the land of trash and garbage, there was a company called Waste Management. Waste management was in the business of collecting and disposing waste, which is like if I ran a lemonade stand but only sold lemonade to people who didn't like lemons. But as it turned out, waste management was more interested in making itself look good than actually doing its job. You see, they were faking their financial reports and inflating their earnings, which is like if I lied about how much money I made selling lemonade and pretended like I was a lemonade tycoon. The company's executives were the ones behind the scam, and they were manipulating the numbers to make the company's financials look better than they really were. It's like if I counted all the water I used to make the lemonade as sales, even though I didn't actually sell any. The scam eventually caught up with Waste Management, and when the truth came out, the company had to restate its earnings and pay millions of dollars in fines. But that wasn't the end of it. The company's reputation was tarnished, and it took years to rebuild customer trust. It's like if I got caught lying about my lemonade sales and had to pay a huge fine, and then nobody wanted to buy lemonade from me anymore. The sad part of the story is that the people who suffered the most were the company's employees and shareholders who lost money and jobs when the scam was exposed. It's like if all the people who worked for me at the lemonade stand lost their jobs because I lied about my sales. So the lesson here is don't cheat people and don't pretend to sell more lemonade than you actually do. Oh, and maybe don't run a waste disposal company if you're not actually interested in disposing of waste. Once upon a time, in the land of coal and corruption, there was a scam called the Indian Coal Allocation Scam. This scam involved the government of India giving away coal mining licenses to companies without following proper procedures, which is like if I started giving away free lemonade to my friends without asking my parents first. The scam was worth billions of dollars and involved many high ranking officials and businessmen. They were using connections and influence to get the coal licenses, which is like if I gave my friends free lemonade because they were popular and had a lot of influence in the playground. But as it turned out, giving away coal licenses without following proper procedures was illegal, and the people involved were caught. The scam caused a huge uproar in India and led to the resignation of the country's Minister of Coal. It's like if I got caught giving away free lemonade without asking my parents and they punished me by taking away my lemonade stand. The sad part of the story is that the coal licenses should have been used to benefit the people of India, but instead they were given away to a select few who were more interested in making money for themselves. It's like if I gave away all my lemonade to my popular friends and didn't give any to the kids who really needed it. The lesson here is don't cheat people and don't give away things that belong to others without their permission. Oh, and maybe don't try to make money by exploiting natural resources that belong to everyone. Once upon a time in the land of stockbrokers and scams, there was a man named Harshad Mehta. Harshad was a stockbroker who became famous for his ability to manipulate the stock market. which is like if I became famous for my ability to sell lemonade at outrageous prices. Harshad's scam involved him using fake bank receipts to take out huge loans from banks, which he then used to buy stocks and drive up their prices. It's like if I borrowed money from my parents to buy lemons and then used those lemons to make more lemonade and sell it at a higher price. Harshad's scam worked for a while and he became one of the richest men in India. He bought fancy cars and expensive jewelry and threw lavish parties, which is like if I became a lemonade billionaire and started throwing parties with gold plated lemonade cups. But as it turned out, Harshad's scam was illegal. And when the truth came out, the stock market crashed and thousands of investors lost their money. Harshad was eventually arrested and charged with fraud, which is like if the police caught me selling fake lemonade and charged me with fraud. The sad part of the story is that many innocent people suffered because of Harshad's greed. The stock market crash caused widespread panic, and many people lost their life savings. It's like if the fake lemonade I sold made people sick and caused them to lose their money and trust in lemonade forever. So the lesson here is very clear. Don't cheat people and don't manipulate markets for your own gain. Oh, and maybe don't try to become a lemonade billionaire by cheating and lying. Once upon a time, in the land of stockbrokers and scams, there was a man named Ketan Parekh. Ketan was a stockbroker who became famous for his ability to manipulate the stock market, which is like if I became famous for my ability to sell lemonades at outrageous prices. Ketan's scam involved him using a network of shell companies to manipulate the prices of stocks, which he then used to make huge profits. It's like if I used a network of fake lemonade stands to make it look like my lemonade was in high demand and charge people more money for it. Ketan's scam worked for a while and he became one of the most powerful men in the Indian stock market. He bought fancy cars and expensive houses and lived the high life, which is like if I became a lemonade mogul and started buying private islands and yachts with my lemonade profits. But as it turned out, Ketan's scam was illegal. And when the truth came out, the stock market crashed and thousands of investors lost their money once again. Ketan was eventually arrested and charged with fraud, which is like if the police caught me using fake lemonade stands and charged me with fraud. The sad part of the story is that many innocent people suffered because of Ketan's greed. The stock market crash caused widespread panic and many people lost their life savings. It's like if the fake lemonade I sold made people sick and caused them to lose their money and trust in lemonade forever. So the lesson here is don't cheat people and don't manipulate the markets for your own gain. Oh, and maybe don't try to become a lemonade mogul by cheating and lying. So I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. If you know about a scam that we should have covered but missed out, or you think that there was something that the people should really know about, please leave it in the comments. Oh, and do not forget to smash the like and the comment and all the buttons that people smash. Thank you today for watching.